Welcome to another episode of Connecting the Dots, a show by JIVINITI produced for Unchained TV. We talk about public and planetary health and all the dots that join these with veganism and a whole food plant-based lifestyle. I'm your host, Nivi Jaswal, and we'll be talking about a holistic medicine modality today. Welcome, Dr. Mansi Vira. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Nivi, for inviting me and introducing me to Divinity and Unchained TV. Also, thank you for this opportunity.
Most welcome. Let's dive right into it. What's your story? How did you choose your path?
Yeah, so the story begins since childhood, since I can barely even remember. And I remember growing up, like, being active and participating in various sports, but still not feeling like my other friends. I always felt a little different. And like, by different, I mean I had allergies, I had ongoing stomach issues, I had asthma. I couldn't understand why certain foods weren't working well for me, or I would really like have allergic reactions or a lot of pain in my body. I also was weak muscularly, but we didn't understand that growing up either. So I had, I've done the big MRIs and other tests and colonoscopies, and as a child, these things are a little scary. They're overwhelming, and I could never understand. But with all of that, I've done so much blood work, and most things would come out normal. So my doctors would dismiss me, saying like, "You're okay, you're fine." And they wouldn't listen to my symptoms. They weren't necessarily willing to put the time in to connect those dots. That like, why are these symptoms happening? So a lot of my interest sparked just because I wanted a different path. I wanted answers, of course, but I also wanted to feel better. So I was introduced to meditation at an early age. I was introduced to Panchakarma when I was only 13, and I did it. And, it was interesting because when I actually got acquainted with holistic medicine, that's the first time I started to feel better or learn how to get there. So my symptoms didn't necessarily stop, but I was able to learn how to cope and manage better, something that the pill pushing did not ever help. And then flashback to now, I am actually finally diagnosed with multiple conditions that explain so much of my past history. So I think I just wanted to be the doctor that I never had, and going into a field that allows me to listen to my patients and really take a holistic and individualized approach. That's what got me here.
Right. That's such a brilliant story, even though there's, a lot of pain that you had to go through with needles and getting all these diagnostics, and the lens of Western medicine, it sounded like just didn't work because they couldn't find, what was wrong. And, we've all encountered this word called idiopathic, right? Well,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we don't know. This must be an idiopathic thing, and it has unknown, mysterious origin, and sometimes, with lack of bedside manner, I would say some practitioners might even say, "Oh, it's all in your head," right?
So many times.
Yes.
Yeah.
So exactly, as a naturopathic doctor that you chose to become, you're now able to offer that empathy to your patients as well, and to really offer them that listening ear. So as a naturopathic doctor, the first question is, what is naturopathic medicine? If you can share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, naturopathic medicine, at least in the US, how it's practiced is a form of primary care, utilizing the various modalities that we have, which I'll go into in just a bit. And we're approaching healing functionally and holistically. So, it's using the principles of the body has an innate and powerful healing capacity, and also the principles of preventative medicine and mind body medicine. So we're really treating the mental, physical, spiritual aspect of the body. That's not to say that we don't do blood work, we don't take that preventative approach. We have been trained in pharmaceuticals as well. So we're working with the patients and meeting them where they are in their journey. And it differs a little bit from India in the sense that in India, it's still very rooted in non-drug, non-supplemental approach to healing. So we, like in India, we also use the modalities of homeopathy, hydrotherapy, botanical medicine, and then the physical therapeutics as well. So we have many, many tools in our toolbox. In the US, I feel like everything that's not allopathic medicine is then categorized as naturopathic almost. So then we also integrate Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine as well into our practice.
Wow, I mean, you've got a huge repertoire then, right? And so, sometimes people would say that, "Oh, I'm seeing a naturopath." And so please develop this distinction for us, for our audience. What is the difference between naturopathic medicine, somebody who's an ND, that's the initial to look for, versus a naturopath? And you gave us this distinction as well, but I'll let you talk to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a very, very important distinction. And I wish and pray everyone that is thinking to visit a naturopathic doctor actually goes through this process of, just interviewing the doctor. Have they studied at a accredited, CNME accredited school? Have they studied in a program that is on site with 4 years of training, including clinical training? 4,100 hours of didactic and clinical experience as well, because naturopaths don't have this training at all. They learn mostly on an online platform, so they don't get any in-person or clinical experience, and they are not licensed. So licensure can be a tricky concept, which I know we'll be talking about in a bit as well. But anyone that has graduated from a CNME accredited program, if they are in a licensable state, they can practice as a licensed doctor. Naturopaths who have not studied in any of these programs cannot, no matter what state they reside in. So there are big differences. And yeah, to the audience, to the public thinking about working with a naturopathic doctor, I think it's really important because we have been trained in pharmaceuticals as well, and most of the population is going to be on medications, and there are profound drug-herb interactions that we have to be watching out for, and it sometimes can become more dangerous if you're not working with someone who's trained with that background.
Right. And I guess that would also imply reimbursement, that somebody has, licensure and they're able to operate in one state versus the other. And we will talk about that in a bit. So are naturopathic doctors, do you guys fall under the ambit of reimbursement versus naturopaths don't? Tell us a little bit about that.
That is true. Naturopaths cannot fall under that reimbursement category because, they're not licensed in any state, so there's no insurance coverage for them. For naturopathic doctors, if you are in a licensed state, you can choose to work with insurance for that reimbursement, but many don't, just because the pay scale is different, and it's very different and difficult and challenging for naturopathic doctors when we're working against a whole team of allopathic doctors around us. And so many will actually choose to do private consultations and private practice and not accept insurance. But it can vary a lot. So that's something that you can look into.
All right, that's interesting to know. I mean, our healthcare system is just so lopsided, right? It's dominated by big pharma, big surgery, and big med devices, and it
Yeah.
doesn't leave enough room for other modalities, which often are less harmful to, the rest of the body. I mean, it's yeah, you're trying to fix an organ at the cost of some others, and that often doesn't make any sense. Um, so talk to us about this licensure part, if there is anything else that you'd like to share about naturopathic medicine licensing in North
So this graphic is really good because the dark teal, not the darkest color, but the second dark color represents the licensed states currently. So there's 22 states that are currently licensed for naturopathic medicine. So that's including also North America, so regions in Canada as well. That's a little different, but our scope of practice is essentially the same. So in these 22 states, the scope still varies state to state. So what might be able to be practiced in California may not be able to be practiced in Connecticut, for example. So it's unfortunate because of that licensure discrepancy. We're not necessarily looked upon as this unified force, the unified naturopathic doctor force. Of course, our profession is working so hard to get there, to be able to get the same scope in each state. But unfortunately, like you mentioned, a lot of the state legislators are influenced by the big pharma companies as well. So it's like where there's more money, there's going to be more of an opinion held, and so it's a challenge. We're working on it currently in New Jersey as well. I'm on the board for a licensure committee, but it's a challenge, and I just wish more and more people would be able to go see naturopathic doctors and then be able to convince their legislators like this is actually what mainstream medicine should be, and the drugs and the surgeries and all of that should be coming after.
Right. And then if the scope is different from state to state and there isn't a unified platform, unified scope, unified, here's what you get, regardless of where you go in North America or at least in this country, it also becomes a question of access.
Absolutely.
So people, and then before even access, a question of awareness. So a lot of people don't know. So for instance, before we spoke, I did not know there was a difference between naturopathic doctor, licensed naturopathic, medicine doctor, trained clinically, and all of the didactic, principles and the grounding that you have, and versus somebody who's a naturopath where education is mostly online, and that working with somebody like you means that there's drug interactions. You mentioned the drug herb interactions, et cetera, that you can supervise, and you can have over the capability to oversee that, right? And you can prescribe drugs as well.
In certain states. So that's again, it depends on the scope of that state. So in Vermont, for example, I could prescribe drugs as well. But in Connecticut, we weren't able to where I was training, where my school was at.
Okay, so that's a distinction to know in scope. Now, you also mentioned that there are Ayurvedic modalities that people can avail of, right? So you have just so many different things that you can offer. It's a menu almost. So tell me, which state in the United States has the largest scope at this point? Who's the most open to giving you guys the ability to really flex your muscles?
Yeah, I think Vermont, Washington, and Oregon are the bigger ones. The West Coast is a little bit more open to these modalities anyway. So
Mhm.
California included, Arizona as well. But yeah, the East Coast needs a little bit more help in, in getting there.
Need a little bit more nudge.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So you've talked about the differences between naturopathic medicine and naturopath. That's very useful for our audience to know. You've spoken about licensure. So when people are looking for, if anyone watching this is looking to work with a naturopathic doctor, how can they find out? Is there a directory you recommend people go check out?
Yeah, I mean there is naturopathic.org, NMI. There's if you also start Googling with naturopathic medicine for your state, you will find the state website as well. Most states are working on that, at least to have a statewide directory to find naturopathic doctors in that state. So yeah, and we have our American Association of Naturopathic Physicians as well. So that's the global entity trying so hard and working so hard to get that scope equal across all the states, and also to get all the states licensed as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have that, and that that entity has their own website and a lot of useful guides and information about naturopathic medicine and what we do, and all of the questions that you just asked too. It lays it out really well. So if you're interested, definitely go check out the AAMP.
Great. So, and AAMP is American Academy.
American Association of Naturopathic Physicians.
American Association of Naturopathic Physicians. We'll be sure to include that in the show notes. All right. Okay. So, did you always plan on becoming a doctor?
I think so. I mean, so up until the age of maybe like 10 or 11, I think I wanted to be a teacher for a long time, and I would pretend to be a teacher at home and like make worksheets and all of that. And I think I still enjoy that aspect of teaching. And naturopathic medicine specifically, I think, allows me to really incorporate that aspect of educating my patients and teaching them, empowering them to take health in their own hands. So, yeah, I feel like I've been wanting to be a doctor since the age of 13. So, yeah, quite a long time now.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. In the morning I was watching the interview, and they were talking about trauma informed healing, and a lot of us go through so much, and oftentimes some of those conditions are named and some are not, depending on who we've spoken to, and you've given that personal example as well. And oftentimes trauma and those adverse earlier experiences in our life leave us feeling powerless. So the solution to trauma, this interview mentioned, isn't help. The solution to trauma is empowerment. And if there is a modality, and it sounds as though you're practicing it, with naturopathic medicine, that it's more empowering versus just pushing a pill or a potion or a surgical alternative.
Oh, 100%. And you articulated that so beautifully. And I'll be honest, even though I am in the doctor's role with this recent diagnosis, I am also a patient. And so I'm working through a lot of these traumas as well, going through situations where I almost did not survive. And that's happened multiple times. And not realizing that that's a lot of trauma that's just being built up in my body. And now releasing it is going to be equally important in my recovery or just management of my health. So, and I think I'm lucky to have chosen this profession, because I don't think if I had gone the allopathic route, I would have that time to pause and reflect and even understand that like there's some force beyond us, beyond just the medicines working, and oftentimes that might be the reason why medicines don't work. They only work to a certain extent, but the rest is the inner healing that we have to do, whether it's trauma or mental health illness or whatever it is. But it's only half the battle when we're trying to heal, I think.
Yeah. So what is your self-care? What does it look like?
So currently, I'll share what I do currently, and also just growing up, I did yoga kind of religiously and meditated every day, and I think that put me in a place. Somehow the universe really it knew that I was going to face a lot of trouble, so it put me in a place to be able to maybe handle it better and manage it a little bit better than others might have. And I think that practice of doing yoga and meditation daily now has expanded. I'm not able to do yoga as much, like physical things, but the meditation and affirmations and gratitude, like writing in my gratitude journal daily, and also some healing. So I do like the chakra meditations and trying to heal each chakra, because a lot of the traumas are situated within the body, different muscle layers and different chakras can help to kind of clean and heal that. So I feel like right now I dedicate like maybe 3-4 hours a day just to myself and my self care.
Right. And would can people expect naturopathic, physicians to understand and be fluent in yoga and breath work and different modalities? There's kriya yoga, there's pranayama, there are just so many different type of breathing practices. Can patients or clients looking to work with a variety of naturopathic medicine practitioners expect them to know this? Is this something that you guys get taught, or is this out of your own experience and curiosity?
Both. So I feel like we are exposed to so much in our curriculum. Like our 4 years are kind of more challenging than the allopathic model, I would say, because we're learning almost 3 different medicines at once. We're learning the allopathic model completely, and then we're also learning naturopathic and the Eastern philosophies like Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine. So in our program, at least, we were exposed to breath work and exposed to just the concept of yoga and meditation. And then it's almost like up to us if we want to explore something further or gain more credibility or just become more trained in one particular area, we can. And so there are doctors, naturopathic doctors, who are well versed in the different types of yoga practices and the different types of breathing practices, because there's a lot of that. I kind of did something similar too. I became a breath coach, so I do breath work training with my patients as well. And it's going through the training, I realized it's really not much different than what just our basic, our root teaches us. Ayurvedic roots teach us about breathing and breath work and how just a few simple breaths can really turn the parasympathetic mode on and turn the sympathetic mode off. So
Yeah.
it's so powerful.
Absolutely. I would love for you to talk a little bit about the sympathetic as well as the parasympathetic, if you're able to share.
Yeah.
And maybe before we end this conversation, you can take us through, a minute of
Breath work.
breathing, and then we can, wrap up our interaction. So talk to us about the autonomic nervous system, and then within that, the two branches, and what's the deal? Like, how does it
Yeah.
govern our emotions and our stability from a day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. So the autonomic nervous system, it's the nervous system that we don't have any control of. We don't actually think about breathing, right? It's just happening automatically. And then you can further divide that autonomic nervous system into the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So the sympathetic, I like to explain it in terms of like running from a bear. So like you're hiking and 20 feet ahead of you, you see a bear and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to get out. And yes, maybe the rules are you don't run and you just stay there, but one part of you is definitely thinking like, I gotta run. So what happens at that time, the liver metabolizes glucagon, so your body is flooded with sugar, that energy for your muscles to just run. And you'll notice when you're in those types of situations, you can do things that you never thought was possible. So you can run faster than you ever had. Your pupils will dilate. And you will, your heart will start racing really fast. You'll get that rush of adrenaline to be able to do that in the first place. So that's all the fight or flight or freeze. That's what it's called. And your body's just ready to flight from the whatever that thing is, that trigger is. So in this,
Yeah.
and then the parasympathetic mode is the complete opposite. It's considered our rest and digest nervous system. So that's when you're able to, that's when our breathing slows down, our heart rate slows down. We're able to, like that's when we meditate. When we meditate, our parasympathetic system is activated. When we're breathing, doing deep breathing as well. Anything creative and, like yoga also is about activating that parasympathetic nervous system. And digestion is when it's best at that state. So I talk about digestion mostly because a lot of complaints I get are GI system related, or like that anxiety, and the gut brain connection is huge, right? So we can't forget about one when we're talking about the other. And when we're in the sympathetic mode, our digestion is shut off. And that's because all the energy is going to our heart and lungs to be able to run away from that, like the bear. So we as a society are now mostly operating in the sympathetic nervous system state. Our work habits, like waking up early, getting caffeinated, and then being on the phone all day, like that constant stimulation, we're always in that fight or flight mode without even recognizing it. And it's causing a lot of health issues for a lot of people because digestion is not well, you're always feeling anxious, your heart rate is high, and it's just not the right state to be in. We should
Right.
be in the parasympathetic nervous system for 75% of the day, if not more. And I think right now we're not even getting to like 50%. So it's a big deal.
I
Yeah.
totally see that. It's we live in a realm or a world of haptic nudges, right? Thanks to all these amazing wristables and wearables and whatnot. And you get notifications, and every single time there's a notification, your heart jumps because it's like you've been reminded and you've been physiologically reminded. And so we may not have saber-toothed tigers and the bears anymore around us, and we built these structures of physical protection, but we don't have much of a protection from a neurophysiological, vasovagal standpoint, and our vagal tone suffers because we're constantly in the sympathetic mode.
Oh, absolutely. And you said it exactly the way it is. It's just so much of that sympathetic stimulation that everything kind of builds towards that in our life nowadays. And we need to really reverse it if we want to reverse cardiovascular disease, if we want to free ourselves from anxiety and more.
Right. Great. Okay. And on top of everything, we have a global pandemic. How do you think that impacts people at this point? And as you describe that, if you can share with us a little bit around, the type of consultations that you've been getting. And, we don't want any names of patients, but, you did offer an image. I'm just going to share that once you, share with us as well. What are the types of people that come to you, especially during the pandemic? Who are you helping? How are you helping them?
Yeah, so it's funny because I launched my practice during the pandemic to begin with. And yeah, it's very, very interesting to see because when we're in that fight or flight mode, which we are, when we're not sure about the future, that creates a lot of fear. And that fear, the body can't distinguish like an actual fear from a made up fear or something that's not as actually fearful. So the body just can't distinguish from whatever it is, and will still stimulate the same response. So your cortisol will initially go high. You'll have that fast breathing, that fast heart rate, and I feel like the first few months of the pandemic, I saw a lot of people with anxiety or reaching out to me because they have anxiety or they have palpitations. And yes, of course, we have to be careful and make sure rule out that there's no other underlying disease going on. But for the most part, it was anxiety, and almost everyone at some level experiencing that. So it also goes to show like the energy of the world, what state we're in. But when you look at it from a disease perspective, also when we're in the mode of fear and our body's trying to just survive, we're not in the best state of health either. Where it's kind of a reduced energy state for our body, and so disease has more way of just taking residence in the body too. So for when we're looking at it from a naturopathic or holistic standpoint, it's equally important to be able to help with the anxiety because that will prevent you from becoming succumb to any illness as well. You want to be in a state where you feel empowered and protected, and you have the right tools in the toolbox to know, like, okay, if it happens, like, here are the supplements that I can take, here are the home remedies I can do, here are the medications that I can take, and not be in that state of fear where you're just like almost paralyzed and you don't know what to do.
Right. And Dr. Vera, talk to us about how, the role that nutrition plays in this as well. When people, come to you with palpitations, with anxiety, they're fearful. My God, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my relationships. This pandemic has upended everything. What role do you see nutrition play?
I cannot stress the importance of nutrition enough, because we also live in a culture where we're eating processed foods, high sugar foods, foods that don't really support our gut health in any way. And that messes up our gut flora. So when we're seeing a lot of these things like anxiety and depression and fear, yes, those are all valid emotions to feel, but no one's looking at the root cause of it. Why did it actually happen? The pandemic is one reason, but a lot of people suffered before as well. And so what is going on at that gut level? And nutrition is so powerful. The concept of food as medicine, it really is, if you treat it like that. So making sure we're getting natural probiotics, leafy greens, those high nutrient dense foods, foods packed with fiber, so we're not having like those sugar spikes going on, because the sugar spikes will literally cause that high and that low, and then people are wondering, why do I feel like bipolar? Why do I feel high and low in different points of the day? Well, this is one of the reasons, because we're not using nutrition optimally to help support our natural like awake and sleep cycles. We're using caffeine instead. So all of these things play a huge role. And I work with patients. I guess with every single patient, I work on using nutrition and food as medicine.
Yeah. And you hit upon a very important thing, about how our gut flora, those archaic organisms that reside inside our intestinal system, which is so complex and it's often called the second brain in our body, how those gut flora don't like processed foods. They don't like inflammatory foods. And I want to shift our conversation a little bit to the differences, or even the prana, if you can talk a little bit, prana, or the energy of all the leafy greens and the fruits and the vegetables and the high fiber micronutrient dense foods that you mentioned, versus animal based foods that may not have it, right? And just the other day I was reading a research, I think it was a poll that was released, that said over half of Americans, don't see any linkages between why they should be giving up meat, and and they don't feel a state of readiness. That poll said that they were ready to do that. Obviously, they're not connecting the dots. So connect the dots for us, Dr. Vera.
Yeah, I mean, we live on this earth. Mother Earth gave us so much to eat, that's natural, that grows underground or on above ground, and it's filled with nutrients, like you said. It's filled with everything we need. If we're not able to supplement, but we're eating a whole foods plant-based diet, very likely you won't even need many supplements. More than like the B12 and vitamin D, for example. And that says a lot, right? You don't need extra supplements to go to the bathroom, to have a bowel movement. Whereas, that's one of the main things I see with people who eat a lot of meat in their regular diet. They're always constipated, or they're always having pain, or like bloating and gas. And that's because we're not, the meat doesn't feed the flora in the way that perhaps nature has wanted it to happen. Of course, there's research otherwise, and a lot of people, a lot of researchers and scientists and doctors as well, promoting meat. And I feel like that's to each their own, because a lot of patients will come to me with that as well. And what I say is, yes, but have you tried plant-based? Have you tried it? Give it a try. And most people, just a week of eating like a salad
Yeah.
for like a one meal change, eating salad, a big bowl of salad once a day, and they are feeling so energetic, so light. The gas and bloating has decreased. They're able to go to the bathroom without any support. Like, I think these are huge lifestyle um, impacts, and people don't realize that, like, wow, their life can change with a simple meal. And that just goes to show how profound it is to be able to eat plant-based. And we're so lucky we live in a society where we have access to these fruits and vegetables and a wide variety of them. There's people in the world who don't even have that. But yeah, I mean, I can't even stress how thankful I am to have that access, but also like it is so profound, and you see that like every patient has almost experienced the same thing, that energy, that difference in lifestyle with
Right.
simple changes.
And it's great you bring up energy, because energy is more than just physical, right? There's the emotional, there's the spiritual component of it as well. And I remember reading a book where I think it was called, it said that every 60 seconds there's billions of animals that are slaughtered and killed in the US alone. And then forward from that, at my nonprofit at Jiviniti, as part of the research program, we've done a couple of pieces of research, and we were doing an interview with a an animal rights activist who's also studied animal studies and socio-psychological, physiological impact on slaughterhouse workers. And she's based in, her name is Mariana Corbello, and she's based in Mexico. And she wrote a paper talking about how workers in the meat processing industry tend to be more communities of color than not, and they tend to suffer from trauma themselves. They tend to suffer from PTSD, and a lot of them consume, meat, maybe consuming meat as well, and not have, access to fresh produce and the profound variety that we're talking about. So indeed, those of us, even in this country, who are able to afford it and have access to these things, have to be grateful. There's no way. But then close to 110 million Americans actually live in distressed and at-risk zip codes in this country. And there's a third world. And, there's a word used like food deserts to describe the situation that they unfortunately find themselves in. So talk to me a little bit around the energetic shifts, emotionally or spiritually, that might, that people might, or your parents might your patients might experience when they make this shift towards a plant-based diet.
So it's so interesting that you bring this up, and thank you for sharing that research, because in large group seminars, so I will speak from one example. I had attended this like big seminar. It was on Zoom, and one of the topics that had come up was plant-based eating, and it was just incredible to see the comments and hear people share their experience when they left meat. The energetics of the body almost lifted. That's how they experienced it, and that's how they shared it. And it makes sense, because yes, the slaughter, the PTSD associated with that, it's almost like you're watching a violent movie, right, going on, and like that stress that you're experiencing, it builds up over time, and there's no way to really release that, because then you're eating that very thing that, if we're experiencing that just watching the animals being slaughtered, think about them and how they must be feeling. So now we're absorbing their emotions, and also most of them are given so much steroids and other antibiotics and all of that, and we're consuming all of these things that don't support us. Actually, they have been showing to impact younger and younger women, PCOS and metabolic disease and diabetes. And why? Because of these external growth hormones and these external antibiotics that we're taking in. We don't even need these antibiotics, and then our gut flora isn't working properly because we're constantly killing them with the antibiotics that we're getting through these foods. So it's just like a multi-layered and multi-level issue that's built up. But it was really nice and heartwarming for me to see that so many people that weren't the same color as me and the same, the same culture as me, because I think a lot of Western cultures don't have that growing up. We had that growing up, that like we don't eat meat, and it's not never something that's crossed my mind. Like, but it was so heartwarming and empowering to see people who were not my skin color and from the culture really really taking that time to reflect on how powerful it was to leave eating meat, feeling that energy, of course, at that spiritual level as well, and just feeling good. The way they described is, I just feel better, like overall. So yeah, it's definitely not just physical energy, but mental, spiritual, every which way.
Yes, absolutely. It's just such a profound energetic shift, and I'm just going to bring up a graphic here. You mentioned to us that this is a typical type of a person who would actually come to you, approach you, and so you spoke about cultural constructs, right? So if somebody who has who comes from a culture that promotes vegetarianism, for example, or eating mostly plant-based foods, it's a very different experience for the doctor. But when you have somebody from a culture, or maybe their microculture, or just their family insisted upon receiving their nutrients from animal-based foods, how do you talk to such patients? What is your approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I have run into this a few times. And in school, I feel like I ran into this a lot because I wasn't necessarily able to just prescribe plant-based, even though that's what I wanted to prescribe. So it was interesting to see at that time, because whether or not one believes in plant-based nutrition, we all know, all scientists know that eating fruits and vegetables is going to overall promote better health. And that's just a very simplified statement that I made, but that's what it comes down to. And so when people come to me, it's usually because of money. They're not able to afford the organic produce or the healthier foods, or they tell me like, yeah, but I can get a burger for like, I can get 5 burgers for the price of one salad. And I'm like, yeah, that's unfortunately very true. And so that's when I have to really start using my health coaching skills and start from scratch. So we go through, their weekly budget, and then we go through where they shop and what types of foods they enjoy eating. And then we start with like frozen foods, because I think frozen vegetables, frozen fruit are still they don't have as much antibiotics and pesticides and all of that. And I educate them that here, like, you can't necessarily afford organic, which is the best. But if you cannot do that, that's okay. There's other options that will get you started in the right direction. And usually it takes a few weeks for that mindset to shift, but it works. And then it's almost like, they will, that confidence is just there because they feel better. They report themselves like, oh, I lost weight. Oh, I feel more energetic. Like, my gut feels better, things like that. So,
right. So the health economics piece is really important, to
yeah,
talk to people about and to start with the budgeting process and to somehow demonstrate that plant-based eating on a budget is possible.
absolutely. Yeah.
Right. That is great. I want to, talk a little bit about, the so cooking is really important, and a lot of people over generations, over years, and with convenience dinners and convenience foods available so much, and you can just drive through and get that burger like your patient mentioned. um, and cooking is really important. Cooking skills have been lost, right? Talk to us a little bit about cooking skills, and obviously to preach, you've got to practice it yourself. So, do you enjoy cooking? Did you have to learn how to cook? Were you a natural at it? How did that work? And talk to us about the importance of culinary techniques, that patients need to develop to sustainably eat plant-based.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just talking to a friend yesterday saying that like I wish they would do I we had a little bit of culinary exposure in high school, but and he did not. And so it was funny. We were talking about the importance of really including that early on in life so kids are engaged in that cooking process because kids are, they're an open slate. If you teach them and you allow them to get hands on, they are on board and they are going to be, I think if I had to choose which population to work with to inspire this change, I think I would choose kids because they are going to be the population who then inspire their own parents how to eat healthier and like what things need to be changed so that they can sustain a healthier lifestyle both for themselves and the earth as well. So going back to that question, yes, I think cooking skills are so necessary. I I happen to learn or get involved in cooking, I would say, because of my allergies, because I couldn't eat what most people ate. And yeah, like growing up, it bothers you because you're different or you have to eat differently than other people. But that got me into really experimenting with different recipes and using ingredients as substitutes for the typical, like the nuts and things that I was allergic to. And finding that like, hey, this is actually really fun. It's stress relieving, and it kind of piques my creativity. So for it has profound impacts in all of those realms, of course. But I think the most impactful was just reconnecting to Mother Earth through cooking, right? Like you're picking up these vegetables and cutting them, and of course. Feeling the different textures, the flavors, the tastes, and understanding like what a carrot tastes like. And it's so sweet, so juicy. And, most people just saute it or have it like with hummus or have it with a lot of like salt and other things that kind of take away from the natural flavor of these fruits and vegetables. So me being able to do that was really profound, I think, in continuing my like nutrition journey and then being able to become a health coach too, because my interest in cooking and nutrition kind of led me through that path.
Yes, and it's incredible, that as a child, or even at high school, you had culinary exposure because a lot of people don't, right? And then they struggle, and then when things are just pre-made for them, they're packaged, their food comes from a manufacturing plant and not necessarily from a plant, and a lot of them are not able to distinguish certain vegetables. I've heard of people saying, "Oh, I've never had kale before. I started eating like this. I never realized that okra existed, unless you're from certain corners of the world where that's a vegetable that grows around and it's part of your culture, maybe, right? Or eggplants. I don't know what to do with an eggplant except just to saute it or barbecue it with tons of oil on it, or butter on it, and so on. So culinary education is really, really important. Now, when you work with your patients, do you incorporate, just like you incorporate the budgeting process, is there a culinary module that people get to taste?
Not officially. It's something that I'm actually really inspired to work on and incorporate. Hopefully, in the near future, I can have videos to demonstrate that as well. But but you asked a good question because yes, a lot of them will ask like, so how do I prepare this? And I'm like, oh, it's just simple. Just steam it and eat it, and that's it. Or like cut it up, steam it, and eat it. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, you can add spices to it, adding the turmeric or basil or oregano or things like that. But I also do go through like how to saute things or what oils to use, the high heat stable oils versus not so much, and things like that. Just to educate and empower and make it seem more simple than it sometimes it is in their heads, because a lot of people, when they are thinking about change, it becomes like this unsurmountable mountain to climb. But it's really not. It's really going back to the basics and really going back to simplicity, which we're so far removed from in our culture, in our daily basis.
Right. And also sort of reducing that sympathetic nervous system reaction to, oh, am I now needing to cook and meal plan and chop all these vegetables? But to really nudge them toward that behavior change and make it seem as though they're simple. It's just it's not a bear. It's just a bowl of fruit,
Exactly, yeah. And it's really going back to less is more.
Yeah.
We are in a culture, in a society that like more is respected, or more like dressing up more, being more more active at work, or working longer hours, and all of these things are not actually healthy for us, our self-esteem, our spiritual growth, our mental growth. It's These things are unfortunately what people are looking for. And when you go back to the basics, you realize that like you're worried about things that should not even affect you, and your own mental health and therefore physical health can be impacted in such a positive way once you start letting go and come back to the roots almost.
Absolutely. Very well said. I wanted to talk about Panchakarma with you. You briefly mentioned it, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Panchakarma. And do you recommend it? Do you think that this is something that your patients have benefited from? So help us understand, what is Panchakarma? What does it mean?
Yeah. So Panchakarma, using the five, the elements, the different aspects of healing, essentially, and it's an ancient Ayurvedic practice from generations ago, and it was like I have to give it credit because it was my window to holistic medicine and feeling somewhat good after so many years. And I feel like that's the healthiest I ever felt after doing Panchakarma. Um, but it also opened the doors to more learning about my own body and my own health, and realizing how dairy does not work for my body at all, and why veganism came into my life. But Panchakarma itself is like what modern holistic medicine refers to as like detox or cleansing programs. So it's a very structured way of getting rid of toxins in the body. So you start with a sauna and massage for the first few days, and that's to really remove all the gunk that's like stuck in the deep layers of your muscles and your body, and you're really tweezing it out, so that that therapeutic massage and the steam allows for your skin pores to open, so toxins can actually get out and be eliminated, because we only have a couple of mechanisms to eliminate the waste from our body. So skin is the most profound and the biggest organ that we have to be able to do that. So you're basically getting your ready prepped for the next part, which is drinking ghee for several days. And of course, that's dairy. And this process, it can be modified in different ways, because we want to promote that vegan aspect and not have to worry about consuming dairy. And then I remember being given like a cup of castor oil, probably not a full cup because that's dangerous to have, but mixed with some other herbs. And you're literally for a whole day just eliminating toxins. And that, it worked. It helped to get rid of whatever was, at that time affecting my body. My skin was glowing. My skin was as healthy as it's been. But the whole process actually brought to light something that I realize is so important to do even on a daily basis, that cleansing, that massaging, these simple things that we don't actually give importance to. If we do it regularly, like the lymphatic drainage, for example, is all about massaging the body to be able to make sure the lymph is being drained properly. So you're able to eliminate the toxins properly as well. And then eating healthy. While we were doing Panchakarma, we were on a special diet, like very simple, very, very simple eating, because the body's whole focus is to eliminate the toxin. So all we want to do is support that natural process. So, that's something that we can do on a daily basis too. We can be mindful. Some people do juice cleanses and, all of that stuff. I don't even think sometimes that's necessary. We can do it just by incorporating that healthy lifestyle and being mindful of what we eat. So majority of our diet consisting of fruits and vegetables already puts you in that place that the body doesn't have to worry about now, like digesting, and it's more able to focus on things like getting rid of the toxins. Right. So I think Panchakarma, it's an ancient practice that, it's helped millions of people. But now when we're in a culture that doesn't necessarily revolve around that ancient, I guess, like the constructs, we can modify it into ways, even on a daily basis or in a like time constructed way in different centers and get the benefits out of it.
And are people to get access to Panchakarma in the United States?
There are healing centers in New Jersey where I live. There's actually two, not too far from me. I personally have not tried them, mostly because, then having to consume the dairy and all of that. And the fact that I feel like I have the tools in the toolbox now to be able to do it myself and to help educate other patients to do the same. But yeah, there's centers in New York as well, one big one, UVon or YO1 that just opened up as well. So that's a big Ayurvedic facility.
All right. I guess we just need to look for a vegan Panchakarma facility then. And I'm pretty sure a vegan entrepreneur, is listening and probably has already created one. Okay, let's talk about your other superpower. I hear that you're a professional dancer, Dr. Vira.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, my previous life was dance. Yeah, so I grew up dancing since the age of 4, and then I trained professionally in Odissi and Bharatanatyam, and I did my what you call like your recital in Odissi. And since then, I guess I've
I think it's called like an Arangaretram.
Arangetram, yeah. In Odissi, we call it a Manch Pravesh.
Okay.
And then in school in Barnard, I actually also majored in dance as well, while doing the pre-med track. So I did a lot of dance, and it was amazing to learn the history of dance around the world, of what it means at the movement level, and I had a very interesting course that actually taught about the movement and interpreting movement, and that inspired me to write about dance movement therapy for my thesis, both in undergrad and medical school. So in exploring how dance, is therapeutic, because for me, it's been my therapy, my only natural therapy to go to. And, you're moving, you're producing endorphins, you're just activating your sacral chakra. Like it's healing in all ways. I knew I could use it for patients. And in my research for my theses, I learned that it actually can be very powerful for spectrum disorders and even neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's. So that's where I'm at.
Wow. And so, there's a lot of creativity, obviously, that's involved. And, this is part of expression therapy. Art is part of expression therapy. Performing arts, even more so, because it involves that physical movement. So, have you ever obviously, amongst the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, there's movement is a big one. how do you talk to your patients about movement? And given your history and background and professional understanding and expertise in dance, how do you bring it to people? How are you using it in your work at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I always emphasize the importance of movement, and I ask, like, even on my questionnaire, prior to meeting with the patient, I will ask them what their physical activity looks like, what are things they do to de-stress, because oftentimes those parallel. And yeah, I'm finding more and more, people are doing the 9 to 5 office job, or they're working from home because of COVID, and they're not moving. And like then they have low back pain or sacral chakra issues. And whether you're doing, whether you're doing the scientific reasoning or the more abstract reasoning, it kind of comes back to the same thing. We're not able to express ourselves. And I say that, and I emphasize how important it is for our brain to be able to move, to produce those endorphins, to get that energy, to get that heart rate up, to sweat. It's important for our skin, because if we're sweating and then we're getting the toxins out that way, it's a multi, I guess it has a multifold impact on our health. And yeah, I introduce like baby steps, because oftentimes people are afraid to make larger changes, even if it's just going for a walk. So I work with patients with baby steps, I would say, and start small and gradually increase, because it's kind of like with the diet too, with nutrition as well. Once they see that it's helping them, they want to do it more. Why not do more of what is working?
Absolutely. Yes. So it's all about creating that mind body practice, reconnecting to the healing powers of food, movement, breathing, expressing yourself. And this is, what your naturopathic medicine practice is all about, Dr. Vira. Before we close, I would love for you to take us through, a minute of breathing, if you can, and I also know that you have produced some live, conversations and interesting, content on your um, Instagram, and I just wanted to ensure that our viewers had all the information. Please go check out Dr. Vira on Instagram at Dr. Mansi Vira. And you started those in March of this year. Okay, so, and we'll have more information, on our way out from this conversation. But now I think it's time for some breathing.
All right. Okay, so just a quick few rounds of breathing we'll do together. You can find a space, whether you're sitting right in your chair or on the floor or even lying down, and gently start by closing your eyes and just taking a couple of regular deep breaths in and out. And imagine this white light coming from the top of your head, channeling through your body all the way to your feet. And this white light is grounding you and energizing you at the same time, and preparing you for the breath work we are about to begin. So I'd like to ask you to place your right hand on your heart and your left hand on your abdomen. And as we do the breathing, try to feel the rising of the chest and the abdomen and the falling. And as we do the breathing, try to have the breath come from where your left hand is, all the way down from your diaphragm. I will be counting to 4 on the inhale and back from 4 on the exhale. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. And you can put your hands on your lap, keep your eyes closed for a moment, and breathe regularly. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes.
That was beautiful, Dr. Vira. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your wisdom and about naturopathic medicine.
Thank you so much, Nivi, for having me and for this amazing opportunity. And I wish you best of luck with your projects and the impact that you're building throughout the world.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll see you on the flip side.